Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed your perspective on life? A moment that shattered everything you thought you knew? A moment that made you question the very fabric of your reality? That's exactly what happened to Mrs. Evelyn Thompson on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and the sweet scent of blooming roses filled her quaint little garden. She was puttering around, humming a gentle tune, completely unaware that her world was about to be turned upside down. Little did she know, the knock on her front door would bring not just visitors, but a secret that had been buried for years, a secret that would shake the foundations of her peaceful existence. Evelyn was a woman of routine. Her days were filled with quiet rituals, morning tea on the porch tending to her beloved roses, a bit of light reading, and perhaps a phone call to her daughter Sarah, who lived several states away. She cherished these simple pleasures, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of her life. Widowed for many years, she had built a life of quiet contentment, a life that revolved around her home, her garden, and the memories of her late husband, Thomas. She was a pillar of her small community, known for her kindness, her warm smile, and her delicious homemade apple pies. Everyone in town knew Mrs. Thompson, and everyone respected her. That Tuesday, however, the ordinary was about to become extraordinary. As Evelyn pruned a particularly stubborn rosebush, she heard the distinct sound of someone knocking at her front door. She straightened up, brushed off her gardening gloves, and walked towards the house, a little surprised. She wasn't expecting anyone. Sarah usually called before visiting, and the mailman had already come and gone. Curiosity piqued, she opened the door, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing before her were two little boys, no more than 6 or 7 years old, both with strikingly similar features. They were African American, with bright, inquisitive eyes and shy smiles. They were dressed in simple, clean clothes, but there was something about their presence that struck Evelyn as unusual. It wasn't just their unexpected arrival. It was the way they were looking at her, a mixture of nervousness and something else, something she couldn't quite place. They were holding hands, and one of them clutched a small, worn teddy bear. They were twins, she realized, identical twins. And they were black. Evelyn, though initially taken aback, quickly composed herself. She had always prided herself on her open-mindedness and her ability to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background. "Hello, dears," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Can I help you?" The boys looked at each other, as if gathering their courage. The one holding the teddy bear stepped forward slightly. "Excuse us, ma'am," he said, his voice barely a whisper. We need to ask you something." Evelyn smiled. "Of course, sweethearts." Come in, it's a bit warm out here. Would you like some lemonade?" The boys nodded shyly and followed her into the house. Evelyn led them into her cozy living room, a space filled with family photos and comfortable armchairs. She offered them lemonade and a plate of freshly baked cookies, which they accepted gratefully. As they sat at her small kitchen table, the boys seemed to relax a little, their initial nervousness subsiding. "So," Evelyn said gently, "what is it you wanted to ask me?" The boys exchanged another look, and the one who had spoken first took a deep breath. "Ma'am," he began, his voice still soft but more confident now, we think you might be our grandma." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the boys, her mind racing. Grandma? She only had one grandchild, Sarah's daughter Emily, who was a bubbly blonde. These boys couldn't possibly be related to her. Or could they? A strange feeling washed over her, a mix of confusion and unease. "What makes you think that, dears?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The boys looked down at their hands, their shyness returning. We found this," the other twin said, pulling a crumpled photograph from his pocket. He carefully unfolded it and handed it to Evelyn. Evelyn took the photograph, her hands trembling slightly. It was an old black and white photo, faded and worn, but the image was clear enough. It was a picture of a young woman, a woman who looked strikingly familiar. A woman with Evelyn's eyes, Evelyn's smile, Evelyn's skin tone. The woman in the photo was African American. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She looked at the boys, then back at the photograph. The resemblance was undeniable. The same bright eyes, the same gentle smile, the same everything. A whirlwind of emotions swirled within her. Shock, confusion, disbelief. This couldn't be happening. It was impossible. Where did you find this?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "In a box," the boy with the teddy bear replied. "In our attic. There were other things too, letters and a birth certificate." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. A birth certificate? What could it mean? She felt a sense of dread creeping into her heart, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. What did the birth certificate say?" she asked, her voice trembling. The boys looked at each other again, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sadness. "It said," the first twin began, his voice trembling now, "it said that our mother's name was Sarah." Evelyn's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah, her Sarah, but that was impossible. Sarah was her daughter, her only child, and Sarah was white. Wasn't she? A coldness spread through her veins, a chilling realization that she couldn't deny any longer. The photograph, the boy's resemblance to her, the birth certificate, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. She had a secret that had been hidden for decades, a secret that was now standing before her in the form of these two innocent little boys, a secret that threatened to shatter her life, her family, and everything she thought she knew about herself. She looked at the boys, their innocent eyes searching hers, and a single question echoed in her mind. What had she done? The silence in the room was thick with unspoken words, heavy with the weight of the revelation. Evelyn stared at the boys, her mind reeling, trying to reconcile the image of her daughter Sarah with the reality of these two little boys sitting before her, claiming her as their grandmother. It was a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with gaping holes, and Evelyn felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, peering into an abyss of unanswered questions. She took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. She had to remain calm for the sake of these children, if nothing else. "Tell me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Tell me about your mother. Tell me about Sarah." The boys exchanged another hesitant glance. The one with the teddy bear, who had introduced himself as Michael, spoke first. "Our mom, she's gone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn's heart sank. "Gone?" she asked softly. "What do you mean, gone?" She died," the other twin, who had introduced himself as David, added. "A long time ago. We don't remember her very much." A wave of sadness washed over Evelyn. These poor children, not only were they carrying the weight of this incredible secret, but they had also lost their mother. She felt a surge of compassion for them, a deep maternal instinct to protect them. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice filled with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Michael and David nodded, their eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "We live with our grandma," Michael said. "Our other grandma, Mom's mom." "And she told you about me?" Evelyn asked, her mind still struggling to grasp the situation. "No," David replied. "We found the picture ourselves in the attic and the birth certificate. Grandma, she doesn't talk about Mom very much." Evelyn understood. There were some wounds that never fully healed, some stories that were too painful to retell. She knew that feeling all too well. She had her own secrets, her own hidden pains buried deep within her heart. What does your other grandma say about your mom's father?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The boys looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. "Our dad?" Michael asked. "We don't know about our dad. Grandma doesn't talk about him either." Evelyn's heart sank. Another mystery, another missing piece. Who was their father? And why had Sarah kept him a secret? The questions were piling up, each one more perplexing than the last. She looked at the boys, their innocent faces filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They were searching for answers, just as she was. They were looking for a connection, a sense of belonging. And Evelyn knew deep down that she owed it to them and to herself to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "Tell me," she said, her voice more resolute now. "Tell me everything you know about your mother, anything at all. Even if it seems unimportant, It might help us understand." And so, the boys began to tell her about their mother, about Sarah, the woman who had given them life, the woman who was now at the center of this incredible mystery. They spoke of the few memories they had of her, her warm smile, her gentle touch, the songs she used to sing to them. They spoke of the stories. Their other grandmother had told them snippets of information about Sarah's life, her dreams, her aspirations. Where did you find this?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "In a box," the boy with the teddy bear replied. "In our attic. There were other things too, letters and a birth certificate." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. A birth certificate? What could it mean? She felt a sense of dread creeping into her heart, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. What did the birth certificate say?" she asked, her voice trembling. The boys looked at each other again, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sadness. "It said," the first twin began, his voice trembling now, "it said that our mother's name was Sarah." Evelyn's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah, her Sarah, but that was impossible. Sarah was her daughter, her only child, and Sarah was white. Wasn't she? A coldness spread through her veins, a chilling realization that she couldn't deny any longer. The photograph, the boy's resemblance to her, the birth certificate, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. She had a secret that had been hidden for decades, a secret that was now standing before her in the form of these two innocent little boys, a secret that threatened to shatter her life, her family, and everything she thought she knew about herself. She looked at the boys, their innocent eyes searching hers, and a single question echoed in her mind. What had she done? The silence in the room was thick with unspoken words, heavy with the weight of the revelation. Evelyn stared at the boys, her mind reeling, trying to reconcile the image of her daughter Sarah with the reality of these two little boys sitting before her, claiming her as their grandmother. It was a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with gaping holes, and Evelyn felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, peering into an abyss of unanswered questions. She took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. She had to remain calm for the sake of these children, if nothing else. "Tell me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Tell me about your mother. Tell me about Sarah." The boys exchanged another hesitant glance. The one with the teddy bear, who had introduced himself as Michael, spoke first. "Our mum, she's gone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn's heart sank. "Gone?" she asked softly. "What do you mean, gone?" She died," the other twin, who had introduced himself as David, added. "A long time ago. We don't remember her very much." A wave of sadness washed over Evelyn. These poor children, not only were they carrying the weight of this incredible secret, but they had also lost their mother. She felt a surge of compassion. For them, a deep maternal instinct to protect them. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice filled with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Michael and David nodded, their eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "We live with our grandma," Michael said. "Our other grandma, Mum's mum." "And she told you about me?" Evelyn asked, her mind still struggling to grasp the situation. "No," David replied. "We found the picture ourselves in the attic and the birth certificate. Grandma. She doesn't talk about Mom very much." Evelyn understood. There were some wounds that never fully healed, some stories that were too painful to retell. She knew that feeling all too well. She had her own secrets, her own hidden pains buried deep within her heart. What does your other grandma say about your mom's father?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The boys looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. "Our dad?" Michael asked. "We don't know about our dad. Grandma doesn't talk about him either." Evelyn's heart sank. Another mystery, another missing piece. Who was their father? And why had Sarah kept him a secret? The questions were piling up, each one more perplexing than the last. She looked at the boys, their innocent faces filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They were searching for answers just as she was. They were looking for a connection, a sense of belonging. And Evelyn knew deep down that she owed it to them and to herself to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "Tell me," she said, her voice more resolute now. "Tell me everything you know about your mother, anything at all. Even if it seems unimportant, it might help us understand." And so, the boys began to tell her about their mother, about Sarah, the woman who had given them life, the woman who was now at the center of this incredible mystery. They spoke of the few memories they had of her, her warm smile, her gentle touch, the songs she used to sing to them. They spoke of the stories their other grandmother had told them, snippets of information about Sarah's life, her dreams, her aspirations. Michael and David hugged her tightly, their small bodies pressing against her. Evelyn closed her eyes, inhaling their sweet scent, a wave of love washing over her. They were her grandchildren, and she would do everything in her power to protect them, to give them the love and security they deserved. After they left, Evelyn sank into her favorite armchair, the photograph of young Sarah clutched tightly in her hand. She stared at the image, searching for clues, for answers. Who was this young woman, this Sarah who had left home so many years ago? What had happened to her? And who was their father? The questions swirled in her mind, each one leading to another deeper mystery. She thought about Sarah, her daughter, the girl she had raised, the woman she thought she knew. She remembered her laughter, her infectious energy, her dreams of exploring the world. She remembered the day Sarah had left, the bittersweet goodbye, the promise to stay in touch. But the letters had stopped coming after a while, and when Evelyn had tried to contact Sarah, she had discovered that she had moved, leaving. No forwarding address. Evelyn had tried to find her, but it was like she had vanished off the face of the earth. A wave of guilt washed over her. Had she failed Sarah somehow? Had she pushed her away? Had she been too strict, too demanding? The questions haunted her, whispering doubts in her ear. She had always believed that Sarah had chosen her own path, that she had wanted to live her own life, away from the small town and the expectations of her family. But now, she wasn't so sure. Now she wondered if something else had happened, something that had forced Sarah to leave, something that she had kept hidden from her mother. She decided to start her search anew, this time with a renewed sense of urgency. She would contact old friends, family members, anyone who might have known Sarah, anyone who might have a clue to her whereabouts, to her life. She would delve into the past, no matter how painful it might be, to uncover the truth. She owed it to Sarah, and she owed it to Michael and David. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Evelyn felt a sense of determination growing within her. She would not rest until she had found the answers she was looking for. She would not give up until she had pieced together the fragments of Sarah's life, until she had solved the mystery that had been haunting her for so many years. But as she embarked on this journey into the past, a chilling question lingered in her mind. What if the truth was more than she could bear? What if the secrets she uncovered shattered her world, leaving her with nothing but broken pieces? Driven by a renewed sense of purpose, Evelyn embarked on her quest to uncover the truth about Sarah's life. She started with the few tangible clues she had: the photograph, the boys' vague recollections, and the lingering questions about Sarah's departure. She contacted old friends from high school, neighbors from her small town, even distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. Each conversation was a breadcrumb, a small piece of the puzzle, but none of them seemed to fit. Sarah's friends remembered her as a vibrant, artistic young woman, full of dreams and aspirations. They remembered her leaving for college, but after that, their memories grew hazy. Some recalled hearing rumors that she had moved to a big city, but no one knew for sure. Evelyn's search led her down winding paths through dusty archives and across countless phone calls. She discovered that Sarah had never actually enrolled in college. The records simply didn't exist. This revelation sent a chill down her spine. If she hadn't gone to college, then where had she gone? What had she been doing all these years? The questions multiplied, each one more perplexing than the last. She revisited the worn photograph, studying Sarah's face, searching for a clue, a hint of the life she had lived. She saw a strength in her eyes, a determination, but also a hint of sadness, a vulnerability that Evelyn had never noticed before. It was as if the photograph was trying to tell her something, whispering secrets from the past. Then she remembered the birth certificate. She had been so focused on the photograph and the boys' stories that she had almost forgotten about it. She retrieved it from the box where the boys had found it, her hands trembling as she unfolded the fragile document. It was a standard birth certificate, listing Sarah's name as the mother. But the father's name? The father's name was blank. A coldness spread through Evelyn's veins. Sarah had never told her about a father. She had always been so secretive about her personal life, but Evelyn had assumed it was because she was young and independent. Now, she wondered if there was more to it than that. Had Sarah been hiding something? Had she been protecting someone? Or had she been running from something? The blank space on the birth certificate became a symbol of the mystery that surrounded Sarah's life. It represented the missing piece of the puzzle, the key to unlocking the truth. Evelyn knew that she had to find out who Sarah's father was. It was the only way to understand what had happened to her daughter, the only way to give Michael and David the answers they deserved. She decided to delve deeper into Sarah's past, to explore the years leading up to her departure. She talked to old neighbors, teachers, even her childhood friends. She learned that Sarah had been a quiet, introspective child, often lost in her own world. She had been artistic and creative, with a passion for music and painting, but she had also been troubled, carrying a sadness that Evelyn had never fully understood. One of Sarah's childhood friends, a woman named Carol, shared a memory that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine. She recalled a time when Sarah had confided in her, telling her about a secret relationship she had been having with a boy from a neighboring town. The boy's name was David. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. David? The same name as one of the twins. Could it be possible? Could this boy, this David from Sarah's past, be the twins' father? The thought was both shocking and exhilarating. It was a long shot, a wild guess, but it was the first real lead she had had in years. She tracked down the David from Sarah's past, now a middle-aged man living in a different state. She hesitated before contacting him, her heart pounding in her chest. What if he knew something? What if he was the key to unlocking the mystery? But what if he wasn't? What if she was wrong? Finally, she gathered her courage and called him. His voice was hesitant at first, then grew warmer as she explained who she was and why she was calling. He listened intently, his silence punctuated by occasional gasps of surprise. When she finished, he took a deep breath and said, "Yes, Mrs. Thompson, I knew your daughter. I was in love with her." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She had found him. She had found Sarah's David. But as she listened to his story, a story of young love, of secret meetings, and of a devastating betrayal, she realized that she was about to uncover a secret that would change everything. A secret that would shatter her world and the lives of everyone she loved. The truth was within reach, but Evelyn wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. David's story painted a picture of a young love, a whirlwind romance between two teenagers from different worlds. Sarah, the artistic free spirit, and David, the quiet, sensitive boy from the neighboring town. They had met at a summer art camp, their shared passion for creativity sparking a connection that quickly blossomed into something deeper. They had spent their summers exploring hidden trails, sharing secrets under starry skies, and dreaming of a future together. But their idyllic world was shattered when Sarah discovered she was pregnant. Fearful of their parents' reactions and unsure of what to do, they had kept the pregnancy a secret. David had wanted to support Sarah, to stand by her, but he was young and scared, unsure of how to provide for a family. He had made a choice he had regretted every day since he had left. He had left Sarah believing it was the best thing for her, for their unborn child. He had convinced himself that he was doing her a favor, giving her the chance to have a better life, a life free from the burden of a teenage pregnancy and a struggling young father. He had moved away, trying to escape the memories, the guilt that gnawed at his soul. He had started a new life, built a career, even married and had children of his own. But he had never forgotten Sarah. He had never stopped wondering about her, about their child. Evelyn listened to David's story, her heart aching for the young Sarah, for the young David, for the children they never had a chance to raise together. She understood his fear, his desperation, but she couldn't forgive him for leaving Sarah alone. She couldn't forgive him for depriving her grandchildren of their father. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "Why did you leave her? Why didn't you come back?" David's eyes filled with tears. "I was young, Mrs. Thompson. I was scared. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was wrong. I was so wrong." He told her how he had tried to find Sarah after he had established himself, how he had searched for her for years, but she had vanished without a trace. He had even hired a private investigator, but it was like she had disappeared off the face of the earth. Evelyn's heart sank. Sarah had never told her about David. She had never mentioned his name. She had carried this secret, this pain, all alone. And now, Evelyn understood why. Sarah had been protecting her children, protecting them from the pain of rejection, from the shame of an absent father. "And you didn't know about the boys?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David shook his head. "No, I had no idea. I swear. If I had known I had children, I would have never left. I would have been there for them, for Sarah." Evelyn looked at David, his face etched with regret, his eyes filled with sorrow. She saw the pain in his heart, the guilt that had been eating away at him for years. She knew that he was telling the truth. He hadn't known about the boys, and then he dropped a bombshell. He told her that Sarah had contacted him a few years ago. She had reached out to him, told him about the boys. She had wanted to meet him, to introduce him to his sons. But he had hesitated. He had been afraid of facing her, afraid of confronting his past. He had asked for time to prepare himself. And then he had never heard from her again. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Sarah had contacted David. She had known about him all along, and she had wanted him to be a part of their lives. But why? Had she never told Evelyn? Why had she kept this secret hidden for so long? A new wave of questions flooded Evelyn's mind. What had happened to Sarah after she had contacted David? Why had she disappeared again? Was it connected to her death? A chilling thought crossed her mind. Had he done something to her? She looked at David, her eyes filled with suspicion. "What happened to Sarah after she contacted you?" she asked, her voice sharp and accusing. David's face paled. I don't know," he stammered. She just stopped calling. I tried to contact her, but her phone was disconnected. I went to the address she had given me, but she wasn't there. I don't know what happened to her." Evelyn didn't believe him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the guilt that he couldn't hide. She knew that he was hiding something. She knew that he was connected to Sarah's disappearance. But how? What had he done? The questions swirled in her mind, creating a storm of suspicion and fear. She had found Sarah's David, but she had also opened a Pandora's box of secrets, a box that threatened to destroy everything she held dear. The truth was within reach, but the price of that truth might be more than she was willing to pay. Evelyn stared at David, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't believe his story. She saw the fear in his eyes, the way his hands trembled as he spoke. She knew he was hiding something crucial to Sarah's disappearance. "You're lying," she said, her voice cold and hard. "You know what happened to Sarah. Tell me the truth, or I swear I will go to the police." David flinched, his eyes darting around the room as if he were looking for an escape. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He seemed trapped, caught in a web of his own making. Finally he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Okay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll tell you everything." He confessed that he had met Sarah again after she had contacted him. They had talked, reminisced about their past, and he had finally confessed his feelings for her. He had asked her to run away with him, to start a new life together. Sarah had agreed, but on one condition. She wanted to introduce him to her sons first. David had met Michael and David. He had been overwhelmed with emotion, seeing his sons for the first time, holding them in his arms. He had felt a surge of love, a connection he had never experienced before. He had wanted to take them away to start their new life as a family, but Sarah had refused. She had told him that she couldn't leave her other family. Evelyn's heart sank. Other family? What other family? Sarah had never mentioned another family. David explained that Sarah had married a man a few years after he had left. He was a kind and wealthy man, but the marriage was loveless. Sarah had stayed with him for the sake of her sons, for the security and stability he provided. But she had never stopped loving David. A wave of anger washed over Evelyn. Sarah had been living a double life. She had been married to another man while still carrying a torch for David, and she had never told Evelyn, never confided in her. "What happened after that?" Evelyn demanded, her voice trembling with rage. David explained that he and Sarah had argued. He had accused her of lying to him, of leading him on. Sarah had tried to explain, to tell him that she loved him, but he had been too angry to listen. He had stormed out, vowing never to see her again. A few days later, he had received a phone call. It was from Sarah's husband. He had told David that Sarah had died in a car accident. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sarah was dead? She had died in a car accident? But how? What had happened? David explained that the police had ruled it an accident. Sarah had been driving home late at night, and her car had veered off the road. She had died instantly. Evelyn felt a wave of grief wash over her, a deep, agonizing pain. Sarah was gone, taken from her too soon, and now she knew the truth about her daughter's life, a truth filled with secrets, lies, and heartbreak. But there was one more piece of the puzzle. David told Evelyn that Sarah's husband had been abusive. He had been jealous of David, suspicious of their relationship. He had threatened Sarah, told her that if she ever tried to leave him, he would take the boys away from her. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. Sarah's death, it wasn't an accident. She had been trying to escape, trying to get away from her abusive husband. He had killed her. He had staged the car accident to cover up his crime. Evelyn felt a surge of rage, a burning desire for justice. She would not let Sarah's death go unpunished. She would make sure that her husband paid for what he had done. She called the police, told them everything David had told her. They promised to investigate, to look into Sarah's death again. Evelyn felt a sense of relief, knowing that the truth would finally come out. But as she waited for the police to arrive, she noticed something strange about David. He was acting, nervous, fidgeting in his seat. He kept looking at the door as if he were expecting someone, and then the door opened. A man walked in. It was Sarah's husband. He smiled at Evelyn, a cold, chilling smile. "I heard you've been asking questions about my wife," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "I'm afraid I have some answers for you." He pulled out a gun, pointing it at Evelyn. "Sarah was going to leave me," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "She was going to take my sons away from me. I couldn't let that happen." He confessed to killing Sarah, staging the car accident to make it look like an accident. He had planned to kill David too, to silence him forever. But David had been one step ahead of him. He had contacted Evelyn, knowing that she would uncover the truth. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, Evelyn realized the final, devastating twist. David hadn't confessed out of guilt or remorse. He had used her. He had used her to get rid of Sarah's husband, his rival, the man who stood between him and his sons. He had played her like a pawn in his twisted game of revenge. The truth had been revealed, but at a terrible cost. Evelyn had found Sarah's killer, but she had also unleashed a dangerous man, a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The climax had arrived, but the story was far from over. The flashing lights of the approaching police cars cut through the tense silence of the room. Sarah's husband, his face a mask of rage and desperation, tightened his grip on the gun. He glanced at David, a look of betrayal and fury in his eyes. "You set me up," he snarled. "You used her just like you used me." David met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "You killed her," he replied, his voice calm and steady. "You took her away from us." The police burst into the room, guns drawn. Sarah's husband, cornered and defeated, lowered his weapon. He knew it was over. He was arrested and taken away, the echoes of his threats and accusations fading into the night. Evelyn watched the scene unfold, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. Relief that the truth had finally come out. Grief for the loss of Sarah. Anger at the man who had taken her life, and a deep sense of betrayal towards David. He had used her, manipulated her emotions, all to achieve his own ends. But in the end, he had also brought Sarah's killer to justice. As the police processed the scene, Evelyn sat down, exhausted and emotionally drained. She looked at David, who was standing quietly in the corner, watching everything with a detached expression. She didn't know what to feel about him. He was Sarah's lover, the father of her grandchildren, yet he was also a man who had abandoned her, a man who had used her. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do it?" David looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and regret. "I loved her," he said softly. "I always loved her. But I was weak. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. And I spent my life regretting it. When she contacted me again, I thought I had a chance to make things right. I wanted to be with her, with my sons. But he wouldn't let her go. He was going to hurt her again. I couldn't let that happen." Evelyn looked at him, trying to discern the truth in his words. Was he telling the truth? Or was he still playing her? She didn't know. But one thing was clear. Sarah's death had brought out the worst in everyone involved. The next day, Evelyn went to the police station to give her statement. She told them everything she knew, everything David had told her. The police confirmed that Sarah's husband had a history of domestic violence. They had suspected him of killing Sarah, but they hadn't had enough evidence to prove it. Now, thanks to David's confession, they finally had their man. As the investigation progressed, more details about Sarah's life came to light. They discovered that she had been planning to leave her husband for months. She had been saving money, making arrangements for her sons. She had even contacted a lawyer about a divorce. But her husband had found out about her plans, and he had taken her life before she could escape. Evelyn felt a wave of sadness wash over her. Sarah had been so close to freedom, so close to happiness. But her dreams had been shattered by a violent and possessive man. A few weeks later, Sarah's husband was brought to trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Justice had been served, but it didn't bring Sarah back. After the trial, Evelyn focused on Michael and David. She wanted to give them the love and support they needed, to help them heal from the trauma they had experienced. She told them about their mother, about her dreams, her hopes, her love for them. She told them about their father, about his regrets, his love for Sarah. Michael and David were devastated by their mother's death, but they were also grateful to finally know the truth about her life. They were happy to have their grandmother in their lives, to have someone who loved them and cared for them. As time passed, Evelyn's grief began to lessen, replaced by a quiet acceptance. She had lost her daughter, but she had gained 2 grandsons. She had uncovered a dark secret, but she had also brought a killer to justice. She had learned the truth about Sarah's life, a truth filled with pain and betrayal, but also with love and resilience. In the end, Evelyn's story is a story of loss and love, of secrets and lies, of betrayal and redemption. It's a story about the complexities of human relationships, the enduring power of family, and the resilience of the human spirit. It's a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail. And that even after the most devastating losses, life can still find a way to bloom. The truth can be painful, but it can also set us free. And sometimes, the greatest mysteries are found not in the grand events of life, but in the quiet moments, the unspoken words, and the hidden connections that bind us together.